Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at Grace Financial Coaching. And today we are talking with Kayla Francis. Kayla is the founder and CEO of Calm Money Collective. Kayla empowers multi-passionate individuals and visionaries to develop the mindset, budget, and systems needed to align their finances with their many passions. This technique ensures that they can spend guilt-free and live the life they desire without sacrificing financial stability. Hi, Kayla. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I say something similar about my clients. I usually say I like to work with high income earners to master their income without dismantling their lifestyle, because so many times people hear financial coach or money manager or something to that effect, and they think we're going to tell them that they're never going on vacation for the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah. Very restricted. It's almost like you can budget while still getting to live the same life that you want. It's all about planning and preparation. So I'm all about guilt-free spending, and I still spend as much like as I want to on what I want to. It's just that I plan for it. I'm not as reckless as I used to be.
Right, exactly. I just had a conversation with somebody about how much we put into our vacation sinking fund every single month, knowing that we're not going on vacation every month, but
Mhm.
when we do want to go on vacation, there will be a pile of money sitting there for us to.
Exactly.
What
The
do you think
money's
the
always.
hardest part is? Now you're working with people one on one usually, or with a couple or a family.
Yeah, it's usually one-on-one, and they're single. I
Mm.
haven't gone into the realm of couples yet. That's a whole different ball game, but it's just one on one for now and working with single women.
Yeah, it is. Working with couples is totally different because technically their accountability partner is in the house with them.
Right.
Whereas with singles, us as their coaches, we are their accountability partner. So when you're working with a single person who really wants to kind of nail, eh, it probably feels like to them that they're trying to nail jello to a tree, right? Um, but when in reality, you're the person that's going to help them figure out that budget and figure out that spending schedule. So what's usually the first thing you do with those people?
The first thing I always say is clarity and awareness. So you have to
Mm.
know where you stand. It's hard to go anywhere, I think, in any realm of life without knowing where you currently stand. So we need to have your financial picture, what you're currently spending money on, and then where your money's coming from. I always say we start out with clarity, then we start moving into the what are your values, what are you passionate about, what is it you're trying to save, what are you trying to pay off. Then we move into the financial goals.
Okay. Now, with what's the age range that you're usually working with?
Usually millennials,
Okay,
because that's
older millennials,
where
because
I am.
I'm a lot older than you, but I'm technically a millennial.
Yeah, I'd say from range 25 to 40 is
Okay.
where I tend to attract. And that's usually the people that I've been working with before in just not even the financial coaching space, but other coaching areas as well.
Nice, more life coaching as well
Right.
too. Yeah.
Life coaching.
How what's something everybody has in common?
Avoidance, I would say that's
Ooh.
common. Being afraid to actually look at their numbers and look at their bank statements and just they want to reach these certain goals. They like, I want to manifest this, I want to be able to pay off this, but they don't want to look at the actual numbers and the data to get them there. So I would say avoidance is huge when it comes to financial coaching
And
and
then
just money in general.
when we're compiling data, are you kind of doing I always tell people that I do like we do a forensic analysis on last month's spending usually. We're going to look at the not to get a little too, law and order graphic-y, but we're going to look at the dead body. We're going to
Mhm.
see what happened here, what caused this, right? So like why was September such a horrible month for that person? Why were they so stressed out? Why did they feel like 2 weeks in that there was no money left? Like, what was the cause of that? And typically, going back 1 month is usually enough for me to see some patterns. Sometimes I gotta go back a little bit further. What do you think?
I agree. I say when you're first starting out, 3 months is usually good for forecasting and kind of seeing where you were, how can we move forward and create a plan. But then after you start getting into a habit, 1 month seems to be enough.
Yeah. One of the things I really love doing is, having people break out special events in their budgets. So
Mm,
if they're traveling that weekend, or even if they're not traveling, if someone's coming to visit, like if you have friends coming in, your friends from college are coming in, it's the four of you, you're probably going to spend more that
yeah.
weekend than you've spent maybe the previous 3 weekends combined, right?
Mhm.
So to me, I wouldn't want to put any sort of restaurants or bars or anything like that, even entertainment activities, I don't think I'd want to put like in the regular budget section. So I usually have people create like a new line for that. How do you handle if you're looking back at 3 months? What if we had like individual one-off events in each of those months?
Mhm. So it depends on which platform I'm using with that specific client, because for some I use a spreadsheet and for some I use the budgeting app that I'm partnered with.
Oh,
So
cool.
if we're using the spreadsheet, then we really don't need to be like, we need a category for this or category for that. We kind of just put it on that specific line of the spreadsheet and then we add it in. So it's not as having a list as much as the budgeting app where we have a list of all the different categories, and if you don't need to use it for that specific month, you just use it, you just keep it as zero. So it's there, but then you keep it as zero. You don't put anything for it if you know you're not going to need it for that specific month or if you're not planning for it.
Right. Yeah, I love the budgeting app that I typically have people use, because you can go back up to like I think 2 or 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we can look at what it cost the last time we went to Disney World.
Right.
As long as you
Mm-hmm.
trap all those expenses in one area, whether it be the line on the spreadsheet or the category in the budget, as long as it's all trapped in there, we can go back and we can say, all right, the in-laws want to take the grandkids to Disney again, but we got to fly there and we got to get the hotel room and blah 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 blah. What did that cost us last time? So we can start preparing for the future.
Correct.
How do you when you talk to these millennials, how do they respond to the fact that you kind of have to go into your budgeting app or your spreadsheet daily?
It's not an easy conversation. I don't usually recommend daily, just starting out, because I don't want it to be scary and I don't want it to seem like, okay, this is another thing to put on my to do list. This is homework. And they kind of, like I said, it's going back to that avoidance piece. So we'll start out with just once a week. Check it for once a week, go in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I like to start with baby steps. And so if daily sounds like a lot and it's stressful, and I see that it's an emotional thing for them where it's very heavy, which most people it is because they go from not looking at it at all. So I say start with baby steps. Take 5 minutes to just go in your bank account and notice what you're feeling. And then you build it up that way. Because that's how I started, where I was one of the avoiders. And the way that I did it with my own financial coach was just taking it slowly. And we would go on and look at my bank account, look at the spreadsheet together. So that way it was easier too, is like having that accountability partner where it's like, okay, let's do this together. So that way, if anything comes up during this time, we can just talk it out right on the call.
Yeah. How yeah, the avoidance part, that is such a good word. It's just so scary sometimes. It's really the fear of the unknown, right? Because like, are you finding that most people are just judging their spending by what's in the bank account at that very moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a mixture of both. For some people, it is. That's why they don't like to look at it. And for some people, because they don't look at it, they're like, oh, I'm expecting this much money next week, or I'm expecting this on the next paycheck. So it'll be all right. So it's a mixed bag of people who, because they're not looking at it, they just assume the money's in there. And then there are people that are like, I know there's probably $200 left and I have to pay this bill. There's only going to be $50 left. And just the thought of it's dwindling down and they have this scarcity feeling about them, like the money's not coming back, it's gone. So that's why they also don't like to look at it.
Yeah. No, that's very true. The scarcity mindset of, yeah, and I actually haven't found anybody who's been terrible at that math. Like they're usually pretty on. So it's like
Mhm.
if you can teach yourself that that's what your kind of how life is working without really paying attention. Imagine how much better you'd be at managing your money if you just paid attention. If
Yeah.
you know, like from a feeling that you have $150 left, that
Mhm.
means you've been at this point before. So now if we looked at it, imagine how much more of these variables we could control, right?
Exactly. Huge game changer once you actually start looking at it. And then you'll realize also there's so much of a sense of control, which a lot of people they feel like they're lacking. I can't control my money, I can't control my spending. It's like a big part of it is you have to actually be involved with it and look at it. That's a part of the reason why it's feeling like you have no control and it feels chaotic.
Right. Yes. And I am a big stickler on what people call controllables versus uncontrollables. I've had this argument for a while. Let me know what you think. That if you are a parent and you have a little boy and he goes and breaks his arm, which most of them do, that's actually not an emergency. Because as an adult who's paying attention to their money and a little more engaged in life than the average person, you should know what your emergency medical deductible is. If you're going into the
Mm,
ER with your kid and you don't know that out of pocket your ER room deductible is $600, then it is an emergency. But if you had known that, it didn't have to be an emergency.
that's a very good point. Which
The only time I had a true emergency, which I was cracking up, I had this gentleman. I was right in the age range that you're talking about. He was working in New York City, and he had saved up and just bought a new iPhone. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember which model it was, 12 or 14 or something. And he saved up and he paid cash. His coworker ran the phone over 2 days later with a forklift.
wow, that is unexpected.
Right. And so in that situation, I said, this is more of an emergency to me because you have not now had the 12 months to save up for the next phone, or 2 years to 24 months to save up for the next phone. To me, that was more of an emergency than the kid breaking their arm, because you could have gone into your medical, you could have gone into open enrollment during when your company is having you sign up for your new health plans, and you could have just looked and said, oh, if we have to go to the ER, the first visit's going to cost us $600, and you could have put $600 away. A lot of people don't like to hear that.
Yeah. A lot of people don't look at that stuff, just like you're mentioning. They
Yeah.
don't look at all of the fine lines and the details and what's actually involved in what they're paying for. And so that's a really good point on how that could be avoided and not having it be like a panic mode and an emergency if you just look at it from the beginning and see what
Right.
you're getting.
I'd much rather you focused on the fact that your 9-year-old has a broken arm and what's he going to do when he has to play softball next week than, oh my gosh, where am I getting $600 from? Because we can end up in an ER. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We could all end up in an ER for any number of reasons. The number is still $600.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like whether it's your son or you or your husband or your daughter or whatever, we could have known that off the top of our heads for sure. So,
Right.
all right. Well, we've talked about some other people's mistakes, but Kayla, the whole point of this show is for our guests to share their financial blunders. So, what would you say is the dumbest thing you've ever done with money?
Yeah, so I've done a lot, but I would say the biggest thing, if I had to pick, was investing in life purpose coaching.
Oh,
Now, I do want to say that I don't regret it. I learned a lot from it, but I would say if I had gone back in time and I could have changed that, that is something I would say was probably dumb, and I would like to, if I could go back in time, change that, not do it again.
now what made you interested in the life purpose coaching in the first place?
Yeah, so long story short, I graduated college. I started a new job from an internship I was doing, and I was just miserable. I was feeling very unfulfilled, and I was like, okay, it's either I'm going to be here for the rest of my life working a job that I don't really enjoy or finding another job, or I need to figure out something else. I
Mm,
had questions I had to answer. And so I went on this journey of, do I want to work for someone for the rest of my life? And the answer was no. So I went on Google. I was like, what can I do where I'm not working for someone else? And then I came across the topic of life purpose, following your life purpose and starting a business from it. And that's how I came across life purpose coaching.
what do you because not everyone's going to sign up for life purpose coaching. What was missing from that internship job? Because you'd obviously done the internship first, I'm guessing, and then they hired you on after you graduated.
Right. I think a big part of it was the thought of working for someone else for the rest of my
Oh,
life, and then also the work that I was doing was very unfulfilling. So I was like, I
so
could have just did something else.
not necessarily that you hated what you were doing or something like that, but just the actual overall overreaching theme of working for someone else was not appealing to you.
Yes. So I
Okay.
think it was both. It started out with, okay, this is boring. I can't do this. I got a degree in this specific thing, and now I feel like I'm stuck here because I got my
Oh.
college degree in this. That was my thought process at the time. And then I was like, okay, what other careers are out there for me? And every time I would think about something, I'm like, I still don't want to work for someone else. So it all came back to that.
Okay. That's understandable. I think a lot of people, and it's even getting a little more niche down because I think life purpose coaching is different than career coaching.
Yeah, it's a little bit different depending on the coach. Some coaches are life purpose and career coaching.
Right.
And some are just life purpose, where it's like they'll help you find your purpose, get some clarity for the direction you want to go in your life. And then the career piece is how can you find a job from your purpose?
Right. How do you find an area that fulfills that purpose that you've then discovered? So, you went through the life purpose coaching, right? We don't regret it, but
Yeah.
perhaps we wouldn't have spent. So was it the timing of when you spent the money or how much you spent that was a little bit regretful?
Yeah, the thing that I'm most regretful about is that I put myself in debt for it. There
Oh,
are other ways I could have went around doing it. So I don't regret the life purpose coaching. My coach was amazing. I still work with her to this day within another capacity, but I did not have the money for it. So I invested in something that I could not afford, and I ended up putting myself in debt. I took out a loan for it. And so I did all of this to find direction in my life, which I could have done it in a way that was less costly.
yeah. Going back, would you have, you know, worked a little bit and saved up for it? Would you just not have taken the loan? Like, what do you think you would have done from a logistical standpoint?
That's a good question. So definitely would have found free resources first, or
Mm,
something that was more budget friendly where I could afford it, where I could save up for it and actually be like, okay, I have the money there for it. So it's guilt free spending. I can just go ahead, take the money out of there and without any issues. But I don't think I would have taken out a loan. That's a
okay.
little crazy, in my opinion, for me to have done that. But it must have been serious back then. I felt like I was desperate, so that's why I took out the loan. But I definitely would not have done that if I could go back in time. And I would only spend what I had instead of putting myself into debt.
Yeah. How do you think this experience plays into the people that you're helping today?
Planning, planning, and saving. So, not to jump into something because you're emotional. I would say a huge part of why I spent so much money and I took out credit cards, took out loans was because I led with emotion and I was like, I'm feeling bad, so I need to spend money. And that was one of my patterns. That was one of my triggers. Whenever I'm feeling sad or frustrated, upset, I'm like, okay, where can I spend money or where can I take someone else's money alone and spend it just to make myself happy? So I think I would definitely reel it back a little bit, try not to spend with emotion, and just take some time to really think about it, reflect before I spend. And then also in the future, now knowing what I know, is saving for these times. So if I do want to spend on personal development or whatever it may be, on growth, that's totally okay. I just need to have a bucket for that. And that's what I recommend clients to do, is having a separate savings or bucket for any development you want in your life, whether it's personal or business.
Yeah, and that applies to, when we work with people like radiological techs, nurses, doctors, like these are real estate agents, like these are fields where you have to keep up with continuing education credits or continuing education
Mhm.
units. Usually they're called CEUs or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to have those to keep your certificate or your license.
Hmm.
90% of states require that stuff. 99% of states require that stuff. So if we're going to make sure that that money is there, why would we not make sure professional or personal development money is there? You know what I mean? To me, it's like you're going to do this, you're going to save up this money so that you can go to this nursing conference, take these classes and do these panels, get your credits so that you keep your nursing license. To me,
Hmm.
personal development money is arguably just as important as that.
Yep. Which I did not see that at that time, which
Yeah.
I was 21, 22. So I don't blame myself too much because of where I was in that position, not really financial literate. I didn't really have good examples of that. But now looking back on it, I'm like, how can I help other people avoid this? And now I know how important having a savings and being able to align your goals with the way that you spend your money is. And so I'm trying to prevent other people from running into this issue.
Yeah. And the emotional side of it, how much do you think was that just pure going to get that loan, putting it on a credit card? Was that just like pure emotion? Like, I need this now. I need this in my life at this time.
Definitely. And the reason why I say that is because I do believe if I was not running on pure emotion, I would not have done that. I think it was mainly just because I felt desperate. And if you think about it logically, I wasn't desperate. I was in a good job. I was making money. I had a roof over my head. I was fine. It's just that because I was feeling like I need to escape from working from someone else. And I was so miserable. I could barely get out of bed without complaining. It was horrible, feeling very unfulfilled. I was like, okay, where someone save me. And so for me, spending money and having someone else guide me through this process was a way of saving me. But at the same time, I really wasn't in any true danger.
Right, exactly. You weren't 5 minutes away from being out on the street, God forbid. So,
Right.
yeah, we need to differentiate the I am miserable in a job and I want to quit with um if I quit this job, not only I'm going to be miserable, I'll be less miserable, but then I will not be able to pay my rent. Like we need to
Mhm.
find that line in the sand before we make rash decisions. You brought up a good point about how sometimes like spending money makes people feel better, right? Doesn't have to be
Mhm.
a big life coaching program. It could just be going shopping, even clicking on Amazon too many times. Um, I actually just did a training for fellow financial coaches on spending addiction. And I think a lot of times people will misdiagnose themselves with spending addiction, or even some of my fellow financial coaches will think that their clients have a spending addiction. But really, retail therapy is a true thing. If that's
Mhm.
how you're wired, spending money gets your dopamine hit, gets you your dopamine hit. And so understanding that part about us, how did you come to realize like, "Oh, that was emotional spending on my part?"
So I think it's when I started implementing my own practices and the practices that I got from my financial coach, where we actually took the time to reflect. So one of the big things that she recommended to me that it sounds so simple, but back then I didn't realize it's something I could do was taking 24 to 48 hours before I spend. So
Yes.
we did that. And then I also have a guilt-free spending card that I literally will put money on there. Whenever I have extra money from one of my side gigs or anything I have going on, I put the money on that guilt-free spending card. So whenever I am feeling like I want to go buy a dinner because I'm not feeling good today, I go buy that dinner because I have the money already there. That money is set aside specifically for when I just want to spend on the whim. And that is okay because I know that money is there and everything else I have is taken care of. So I realized if I didn't take the time to think about what I was purchasing and making sure that it aligned with my goals, that's when it was an emotional spend for me. But I don't guilt myself if I want to buy something and I have enough money on that guilt free spending card.
I think that's a great move. One of the things that I think one of the things that people don't realize how much they end up spending on it is I've actually had some clients recently start adding a takeout line to their food budget section. It used to just be groceries and restaurants. And then during COVID, I had to have some people add an alcohol line. Well, because I was one of them, not because I was
Mhm.
quadrupling my alcohol intake, but my restaurant line was 0, right? Because where we lived, we weren't going anywhere. Like everything was shut down.
Mhm.
And so we were spending 0 on restaurants, but all the liquor stores in the country were still open. So we could go get beer and have our neighbors over or have some friends who, we were already in communication with physically, come over and have a couple beers. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm spending 0 in restaurants, but 200 in alcohol.
Yeah, it's shifted.
Exactly. So it wasn't like we went off the deep end or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice it the first couple of months because restaurants went down to 0. So I didn't realize how much we were spending on alcohol until we started going back out again. And I'm like, oh, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. So then I broke it down into the 2 categories. So recently I've had clients where I've broken it down into groceries, restaurants, alcohol, and then I'm separating takeout because DoorDash, Grubhub,
Oh
Uber
yeah.
Eats, it is getting out of control. My husband and I order so little off that stuff. I was able to go back 3 years and look at the cost of an order for the exact same thing from a Vietnamese pho restaurant. I looked,
Mm-hmm.
it literally doubled in price. The exact same order from 3 years ago went from like $35 to $70.
Wow.
And I
Everything's
don't
getting.
think people realize they're tired at the end of the day. They don't feel like cooking. Takeout is like the convenience factor is just overrunning our lives sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's getting.
how do you deal with that with millennials? Because I feel like we're the worst. Like we are just like, oh, I don't feel like cooking today. I'm just gonna order Uber Eats and sit on my couch. Like we can be very dramatic sometimes.
Well, I'm all about being flexible. So you were talking about going back from the previous month, seeing where you ended up spending more or not. And so when you're looking at that present month, it's like, okay, we're going to plan for as much as we can plan looking at the last month, but we also want to make sure that we're staying within the money that's actually in your bank account. So I use a method of zero-based budgeting and plan ahead method, where we're making sure we budget out the money that you have, but also planning at the same time using the app. And so it's okay to be flexible. So if you don't end up using the money that you thought you were going to use in a certain category, move it somewhere else. So if you do
Yes.
need the extra money for takeout because you're feeling bad for next week, just shift the money that you budgeted in a different category and move it somewhere else, which is totally fine to do that. Don't feel like you have to stay within the numbers that you set. Just change it and adjust it as you need to.
Yeah, stuff changes all the time. My favorite is always um the parents who are like, "Oh my gosh, school pictures. Oh my gosh, the kid outgrew the cleats from last year," which, obviously makes sense. Kids tend to grow. Like it's those things that like it's not necessarily going to destroy the budget, but like we really should have probably put it in the budget for November or for September or whatever. And then just encouraging them to listen. Let's log in right now. Okay, we've got $100 in entertainment here. It's already halfway through the month. We're probably not spending the $100. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to the movies. There's nothing the kids want to see. Let's move some of that entertainment money or whatever and, pay cash for the kids' cleats or, pay for the photo package that you really want, and move that money accordingly to whatever the new priority is that week.
Yeah. And even for October, so something I was talking about with a friend is I don't have any kids, but if you're someone who wants to hand out candy for Halloween, plan for that now. Put that in your budget that you want to buy candy and then go to the stores because I'm pretty sure I haven't been to go shopping for candy yet, but I'm sure they probably have discounted candy right now for people to rack up on, maybe BOGO at Publix to get some candy. So start planning for that right now. Don't wait till Halloween day to be like, oh, do I have enough money to get to buy the candy or take my kids trick or treating? Start planning for it right now.
Yes, you're gonna laugh at me. I bought my Halloween candy. I buy my Halloween candy at the end of August because the big box warehouse store near us always has it on sale in August. And then I buy the candy, I hide it from my husband. I mean, it's all processed sugar, all right? It's not gonna go bad in 2 months. So it
Yeah,
sits there from
that's
the end
smart.
of August to the end of October. He doesn't know where it's hiding. He's none the wiser, and everybody gets full-size candy bars at my house. So
Everybody's happy.
awesome. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your financial blunders with us. I hope everybody will join us next time for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. And if you'd like to reach out to Kayla, all of her contact information is in our show notes. Thanks so much, Kayla.
All right, thank you. It was fun.